So, without further ado, I think we're just going to move on to our first speaker. And I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Andrew Kerr from ECCI. And you're all very clever. You can Google Andy and you can find his biography and all of those kind of things. So I'm not going to give you a big long list of his many accomplishments and achievements. But Andy was also a member of the 2020 Climate Group and the author of the research that has been underpinned this event this evening. So you'll hear more from Andy. So over to you.
Okay, very good evening to you. I thought what I'd do to start this 10 minutes is just to see where you were as an audience. So I just want to ask you a couple of questions. First and foremost, does anybody know when the 30 mile an hour maximum speed limit in built-up areas put into the UK legislation? Okay. Any thoughts? I'll give you a decade, so you've got a bit of a closer thing. So anybody think it was put in the 70s or the 80s? Okay, 60s? 50s? 40s? 30s? 20s? Okay, it was 1934. Road Traffic Act of 1934 made the 30 mile an hour speed limit. Just out of interest, again, I haven't got a question here, but does anyone know roughly how many vehicles were on the roads at that time in the UK? Give or take, to the nearest million. Okay, so there's 1.7 million vehicles on the road, 1926, so just before the 1930s. Do you know how many there are now? 34.7 million registered vehicles in autumn of 2012. So we've had a 20-fold increase in the number of vehicles over that time. When was the 70 mile an hour speed limit put into legislation? Okay. 1960s, yeah. Okay, so that's been around for whatever that is, 40, 45, 46 years. Anybody know what the average speed of motor transport in off-peak periods, it's not the rush hour, in London in 1904, to the nearest mile an hour? Any thoughts? 14, 12, 20? 12 is right. Anybody know what it was in 1996 when they most recently measured it? 10, yeah. Okay. And the point about saying that is that although we're talking about speed limits here, speed limits are not the only determinant of how fast average journey times and journey speeds are. Congestion is a hugely big thing for us at the moment, and that impinges on what I'm going to talk about as well. Okay, so we were invited by the 2020 Group to commission work on what's the implications of speed limits. And the aim of this was to try and really raise the quality of debate, let's get the best evidence that was available, not to say what should the speed limits be, because that depends on us as society, but rather what are the implications of different speed limits for the economy, for vehicle speeds, for air quality, for noise, for communities and health, and so on. And that report is available to anybody who wants to see it. It will be on the website and so on. And it was really just a very short, most of these are covered in a couple of pages, and it just flags some of the key insights that people have got from this. And really the evidence shows a number of things. One of the interesting things it shows is that the average speed limit, average trip speed, as you reduce it below about 20 miles an hour, your pollutants, whether it's air pollutants or greenhouse gas pollutants, rises dramatically. In other words, slow speeds in urban congested areas is a very polluting way of travel in vehicles. We also know a lot about the air pollution implications of that, which is very important. Equally, we know that as an economy, we need to move goods and services around the country, and therefore it's in our economic interest to have effective transport systems which allow us to get from A to B. We've heard a lot in this debate about the safety issues, and in broad terms, the kinetic energy of a car or a lorry or a truck, as it gets faster, creates massively more damage to people if they hit them. So in other words, you tend to get a proportion where if you increase the speed by 1%, you'll do a proportionate damage of 2 or 3%, and you'll increase fatalities by 4%, for example. So in other words, every increase in speed, you're more likely to create safety issues. There's also an issue about social inclusion, that if you have communities that are being cut by fast roads, they tend to end up very excluded from local amenities like shops or parks and so on. And there's also the whole issue about how we behave in cars and understanding that our perceptions of how fast we're going very much determines how we view a journey. So, for example, if we're driving very fast, we overestimate how much time we will save by driving a little bit faster. So if we're going at 70, we think we'll save lots of time by going at 80, but actually we tend to overestimate how much time we will save, and vice versa if we're going very slowly. So these are the sorts of things that are brought out in this document. So what does this evidence tell us about speed limits? Well, the answer is it really comes down to, and what we want to flag this evening is it depends on what sort of society we want going forward. There is no one single right answer which says this is what it should be, because it's an interplay between economic viability, vibrancy, between social inclusivity in terms of use of the transport system, and environmental issues like air pollution. So what I want to do is just flag a few of the ideas that might come out of this type of work as a way of just flagging some of these issues. These aren't specifically ideas that are going to be taken forward, but it's really just to get people thinking about it. So one might be to say, we already know that where there are very congested roads, like the M8, we know that actually reducing speed limits in those spaces, as they have done in many motorways in England, for example, actually improves traffic flow, and it reduces emissions. In other words, it has environmental benefits and actually it improves traffic flow. So there's virtually no economic impact whatsoever. So there's a bit of a win-win there. We know that certainly in urban areas, people struggle when you've got cars going past 30 miles an hour. So technically within the speed limit, or many speed limits, but actually what you find is you can actually reduce the inclusion of the community. You stop people walking, you stop people cycling, because people are driving through and using cut-throughs. So one suggestion might be to say, well, why don't we completely reclaim residential streets, i.e. not through roads, at 20 miles an hour to try and encourage more people to get out of cars and use cycling and walking, because that's actually in our interest from a health perspective as well as from an environmental perspective. Similarly, one of the issues about speed, and I talked about speed as being an issue in terms of the faster you are, the more dangerous it is, but equally speed variance is a really big issue. So actually, if you have a slow-moving vehicle in a fast-moving traffic flow, that is equally dangerous. So actually where you tend to get accidents is where you have vehicles moving at different speeds. What you wanted is to converge the speeds into one. So why not say that HGVs actually, because they are constrained, say on big A roads, single carriageway A roads, at 40 miles an hour, why not say they ought to go up to 50? Because actually that's likely to reduce accidents because you're going to get less stacked up traffic behind them. So those are the sorts of topics that we're trying to bring out today, and I'd value your thoughts and questions on those later.